Does anybody remember the rawr mantis? This is a surron competitor, emoto. I think that's the official class here. When it first came out, it was 60 volts, so like exactly like the surron. But quickly after, they came out with a much better 72 volt version. I certainly like to see more competition in this field, and we're at the point now that we actually have a lot of great, surron-esque bikes to choose from. But as far as I can tell, the bike never really blew up in popularity. I'm sure a lot of you guys don't even know about the company. And when you compare the rawr mantis 72 volt against something like the eRide Pro S, I can see why it's suffering in terms of its own adoption. The bike is larger, it's more bulky, it's 165 pounds, it has less power. The battery, it's only 35 amp hours versus the 40 amp hours of the eRide Pro SS. And if I remember correctly, I think the bike was more expensive, like $6,000. But now, when I previously checked, it was only $4,500, which is a much more compelling price point and cheaper than the eRide Pro S, as it should be given its specifications. But the reason why I'm talking about them today is because they're coming out with a brand new model. You can pre-order it now, and I think in July at some point it's supposed to begin shipping. And very clearly, it's trying to address all of these problems. So this is the bike. I think it looks really good. Of course, it's similar to the OG model. The battery placement, it's slanted in the opposite direction as a surron eRide Pro S. But the core thing about this bike is that it's smaller. They're advertising this as a medium-sized emoto. It maintains a 72 volt battery. It comes in a little bit smaller than the full size at 30 amp hours, which is only 5 amp hours less than the full size model. So it is a decrease, but still a substantial battery. And the price tag here is very strong. It comes in, as of right now, at an even $3,000. That's the same price as the Talaria XXX, while giving you a lot of the same specifications and capabilities as something like an eRide Pro S, which costs closer to $5,000. Now, obviously, it's not quite as good as an eRide Pro S. The power here is less. I think the nominal power is like 5 kilowatts. Peak is, I believe, 6,500. So still very capable, but not quite the 12 kilowatts of the eRide Pro S. But the top speed is very good. They advertise it as 50 miles per hour, and given that it's a 72 volt system, that sounds completely reasonable. And they also reworked the geometry of the bike. So one of the big complaints with the OG model was the funky seat. You can see how, due to the angle of the battery, they had to kind of kick back the seat. And a lot of people complained that the seating position, along with the seat itself, was just straight up uncomfortable with the original Mantis. But I'm very happy to see that with this new X model, they give this a full MX seat, similar to, say, the Talaria XXX or the Surron Ultra B. How on these bikes, the seat comes over top the battery, making it a single padded unit. And it allows you to adjust your riding ergonomics to whatever you find most comfortable. And that's a big deal. The way that a bike feels when riding is very important. If a bike is just off, it's not comfortable to ride, even if it has a ton of power and other great benefits, you're just not going to enjoy riding it. I also noticed from the images that the rear shock and the swing arm in general has been slightly redesigned. If you look at the shock between the original model and this new X model, it's different geometry. So this geometry should definitely be at least a slight improvement. Look at the motor. Physically, it's quite a large motor, which is promising for better heat dissipation, potentially upgrading it, running even more power through it in the future. But if I can draw your attention to the drivetrain, unlike with the Surron eRide Pro S, even the Talaria XXX, this simply has one chain that connects the motor to the back wheel, spanning the pivot point. This is both good and bad. Having one chain versus a belt and a chain obviously reduces complexity, less things to have to worry about and change out in the future. But when you have the chain span the pivot point of the rear swing arm, that makes tensioning an issue. It's more likely that the chain is gonna pop off the rear sprocket. You also need to constantly adjust the tension. Honestly, I don't know which one is technically better. If you guys have strong opinions on these drivetrains, let us all know in the comments below which one you prefer. The last thing I'll say on the drivetrain is I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't use a belt. A big complaint people have with the Surron eRide Pro S, all these bikes, is the noise they make. And that all comes down to the chain. When it spins at high RPM, it simply makes a lot of noise, and a belt would fix that. Belts are nearly silent and they require a lot less maintenance than a chain. But in a nutshell, that's the new Mantis X. A very promising new bike that's somewhere in between a Talaria XXX and an E-Ride Pro SS. It's just $3,000, 72 volts, 30 amp hour battery, motor, 5 kilowatts nominal, peak of 6.5. And the seating ergonomics have been redesigned to make the bike more comfortable and agile to ride. And I do think this product has the potential to be a game changer. It's the price of a Talaria XXX, but it gives you that 72 volt power a lot of us want. And now that the bike is more comfortable and it's the size of a Surron, let us know what you think about this in the comments below. When it comes out, I'm gonna try to get my hands on one to review, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.